It was a warm, bright night, where the energy in the air felt electric, pulsating and uncontrollable. The stage, with its interplay of lights, smoke and sounds, seemed to create an almost magical atmosphere. The crowd was completely consumed by anticipation. On one side, the first beats of the music breaking the tension. On the other, the sound of screams and anxious applause from fans who were about to experience something they could never have imagined. Each person there had their own story, but all were united by anticipation. Amy Winehouse was about to take the stage. Soft lighting enveloped the set, emphasizing Amy's silhouette as she stood center stage. Her presence was overwhelming, and the way she prepared to begin the show conveyed the sensation that everything around her would disappear. There, on stage, Amy's energy became palpable. The smoke dissipated, the lights brightened, and with a movement of her body, she began to sing. It wasn't just a musical performance, it was a sensory experience, where the music transcended, permeating the audience's bodies and taking them over completely. From the moment her voice rang out, unmistakable, like a force of nature, the audience was captivated. It wasn't just the sound of a famous singer, but the connection she created with each person there. Her voice, which sounded like a scream from the soul, was at once raw and seductive, striking a contrast with the glamour of the stage and her own persona. Everyone knew they were there, not just to hear the music, but to feel every emotion Amy was willing to convey, and her music seemed to bring out the deepest truths in those who listened. It was a moment that transcended the simple act of watching a show. The energy of the crowd was like a reflection of Amy's presence, intense, unfiltered, and completely immersive. People surrendered to that moment because they knew it was something unique, something that would perhaps never be repeated. On that stage, Amy Winehouse wasn't just an artist, she became a portal to another reality, where the boundaries between audience and star dissolved. And then, something unthinkable happened. Amy, with her piercing gaze and commanding presence, made an unexpected gesture. She wasn't just singing, she wasn't just there to be adored. She wanted something more, something that would change the dynamic of that show forever. It was at that precise moment that Amy looked out at the audience and, with uncanny confidence, pointed to someone. The crowd stopped. That gesture carried such profound meaning that even the music seemed to have stopped, as if time had slowed for a second. She wasn't just performing. Amy was about to invite someone to share the stage with her, and what happened next was something no one would ever forget. The audience, previously completely absorbed in Amy's music, fell into an awkward silence as soon as she pointed to that fan. What was supposed to be an ordinary night of concerts turned into something no one could have predicted. The fan, visibly shocked, couldn't process what was happening. His hands trembled and his eyes widened, unable to believe that fate had offered him an opportunity that seemed impossible. The music faded, and the world's attention focused on that single moment. Amy, with her typical irreverence, was undeterred. She kept her gaze fixed on the fan, and the gesture was more than an invitation. It was a command, as if to say, "You're part of this now." The fan, unsure how to react, took a hesitant step toward the stage. The audience, initially surprised, soon became enveloped in an atmosphere of curiosity and anticipation. Everyone's eyes were fixed on him, as if waiting to see what he would do. He stepped onto the stage, more on impulse than anything else, and there, in that moment of transition, he was no longer a simple spectator. He was part of the story. What happened next was even more surreal. Amy grabbed the microphone, handed it to the fan, and with a mischievous smile, got him to sing along. The audience wasn't sure whether to be shocked or overcome with the joy of the moment. The fan, red-faced with nervousness, hesitated to begin, but soon surrendered to the magic of the moment. His voice, still hesitant, blended with Amy's, creating an unexpected harmony that echoed throughout the venue. What began as a simple microphone exchange turned into something much greater, a fusion experience between icon and fan, something no one ever expected to witness. The moment was a shock of emotions. For the fan, it felt like the entire world was falling apart around them, and the stage became their place, as if they'd been there from the beginning. The energy Amy exuded wasn't just that of a star, but of a woman who wanted her fans to feel part of her art. It was as if she'd invited the fan to give something of themselves, to surrender to the music with the same passion she put into every note. This simple, seemingly spontaneous gesture transformed the show into a shared experience, where the line between artist and audience completely dissolved. Meanwhile, the audience, previously static and awed, was now stirred in a mixture of enchantment and disbelief. Emotions ran high. What they were witnessing wasn't just a show, but a transgression of the traditional boundaries between artist and fan. Amy wasn't there just to sing for them. She wanted them to be there, with her. And the fan, in some way, represented everyone else there to experience that moment. The revolution on stage wasn't just in the musical performance, but in the way Amy was creating a new form of connection with her audience. The audience, which had previously surrendered itself completely to the music, was now united in something greater. They were witnessing a historic event, not just because they were seeing Amy Winehouse at her purest, but because they were experiencing the power of an artist who cared nothing for convention. She wanted something more. She wanted everyone to be with her, and the fan was the living embodiment of that connection. What she did, calling out to that fan, was more than a gesture of affection. It was a breaking down of barriers, an affirmation that in music, everyone is equal. The fan, who had previously been just another face in the crowd, now found himself at the epicenter of something surreal. He was an ordinary young man, with the passion of many others who were there to see their idol. But he never imagined that his name would be spoken by her, much less that he would take the stage. In that moment, he wasn't just a fan, he was part of the art, part of the magic that Amy created with each performance. He never imagined that the moment he was experiencing would be something he would cherish for the rest of his life. When Amy called him, he hardly knew what to do. He looked at his friends around him, eyes wide with disbelief, searching for some kind of confirmation that this was real. But there was no time to think. The stage was calling him, and he stepped onto it without even knowing what to expect. His mind was torn between fear and excitement. What would become of his life after this moment? How could he return to his normal routine, knowing something so extraordinary had happened? As he climbed the stage stairs, the fan felt the weight of the entire audience's attention on him. It was as if, in that instant, all eyes were fixed on his body, evaluating every movement. The sound of the audience mixed with the sound of his own heartbeat, and he felt a moment of panic. But as soon as he approached Amy, that feeling of anxiety was replaced by a strange, powerful calm. Amy didn't see him as a mere fan. She saw him as an equal, someone capable of surrendering to the music and being part of the moment they were creating together. When Amy handed him the microphone and began to sing along, something inside him shifted. He allowed himself to live in the moment. The music ceased to be something distant, something to merely observe. It became a force that enveloped him completely, transforming him. He felt the weight and freedom of his own voice blending with Amy's. Fear disappeared, replaced by confidence and a sense of belonging. The fan, once shy and hesitant, was now experiencing his own form of musical transcendence. He felt it wasn't just about singing, it was about surrendering completely to the experience. For him, that moment was more than just a meeting with his idol. It was a redefinition of what it means to be a fan, of what it means to be close to someone you admire. He wasn't there just to shout Amy's name or ask for a photo. He was there to experience music in its purest essence, to understand what it truly meant to be part of something bigger, something that only music could provide. In just a few minutes, that fan was transformed. He was no longer just an observer, but an active participant in an experience he could never have imagined. His life would never be the same again. As the fan sang alongside Amy, he felt a sense of belonging, of complete connection. There were no longer any barriers between him and the artist. They were one in that moment. The audience, who had previously seen him as a distant spectator, now recognized him as someone who had truly been part of the show. He felt as if the stage were now his place, and the music, which he had previously only listened to, was now an extension of himself. Nothing would ever be the same again. As fans surrendered to this unique experience, the audience watched in amazement, absorbing every second of this extraordinary spectacle. It wasn't just Amy Winehouse's performance that captivated them, but the way she broke all conventions and brought the audience closer to her art. That night, more than a concert, became a ritual of connection. Amy wasn't on stage just to show off. She was there to give herself and invite everyone to be a part of her journey. The audience, which had initially remained silent, now gave in to the collective emotion. They saw in Amy not just the glamorous star, but the woman who, in a simple gesture, decided to share her art in a genuine and unfiltered way. That interaction with the fan wasn't a rehearsed move or a marketing strategy. It was a genuine, spontaneous act, a reflection of Amy's free and authentic spirit. She wasn't just performing for others. She was bringing her fans with her, showing that in music there was no distinction between artist and audience. Everyone was there to share the same experience, to breathe the same music. For the audience, what Amy had done was a quiet revolution. She had challenged the norm that the stage was an exclusive place for artists, and that the audience was there merely to observe without actively participating. That simple gesture, calling a fan onto the stage, transcended any ordinary interaction between artists and fans. Amy, with her irreverence and authenticity, had broken down the invisible barriers that separated the two parties, and in doing so, transformed the evening into something more profound. She gave fans the opportunity not only to see her, but to feel what she felt as she sang, to lose themselves in the music with her, to live the moment with the same intensity that she did. The audience, previously mere spectators, now saw themselves as part of something much larger. They were more than just consumers of Amy's music. They were experiencing the pure connection that music can offer, without artifice, without distance, just the genuine exchange between those who create and those who receive. Every movement Amy made on stage, every look she exchanged with a fan, with the audience, reinforced this idea. Music is a universal language, and all of us artists and fans alike are connected by it in a unique and indivisible way. That moment wasn't just a curiosity or an anecdote to tell friends after the show. It became a turning point in how fans viewed their idols, how art could become a collaborative and transformative experience. The audience, touched by Amy's authenticity, felt something had shifted. It was no longer about distant admiration, but about true unity, a fusion of souls through music. That night would not be forgotten, because for those who witnessed it, it represented a paradigm shift. Amy had created a new way of connecting with audiences, and in doing so, had forever changed the dynamics of show business. After that unforgettable moment, the fan stepped off the stage, but the experience remained with him unchanged. He, who had previously been in a state of complete disbelief, now carried with him a sense of belonging and transformation. It wasn't just the excitement of being with Amy Winehouse, but something deeper, something he could barely fathom, that moment of immersion in the music, of connecting with the artist's energy, was something that went far beyond a simple fan memory. He knew that somehow his life would never be the same. Over the next few days, he reflected on the impact of what had happened. People around him began asking about the experience, but he didn't have enough words to describe it with the intensity he truly felt. Words seemed small compared to the magnitude of what he had experienced. He realized it wasn't just about singing with Amy Winehouse on that stage. The true meaning of the experience lay in the way that simple interaction altered his perception of art, artists, and the role of the audience in all that. He understood that music wasn't something to be passively consumed, but an energy to be shared and exchanged. For the fan, the greatest impact of all was the way Amy had transformed his relationship with art. Until then, he had viewed music from a distance as something he merely listened to, but with that gesture from Amy, he began to see art as a living experience. He felt a part of it, as if the music were there, flowing through him. The stage was no longer a sacred and distant place, reserved for the chosen. Amy had shown him that the true magic of music lies in everyone's ability to connect with it in a unique way, to share special moments with the energy it awakens. The transformation wasn't just emotional, but also mental. He began to rethink his own life and his own limits. The fear he felt when taking the stage was overcome by a sense of freedom and fulfillment. He realized that, deep down, everyone has something unique to offer, an energy that, when shared, can create something transformative. The experience with Amy Winehouse made him question what really matters. It's not just about being admired, but about being part of something genuine, something that goes beyond expectations and applause. He found himself stronger, more confident, and more willing to pursue what he truly wanted in life, unafraid to take risks. Over time, the fan realized that what he experienced wasn't just a rare moment, but a lesson he would carry with him forever. He felt inspired to not only continue to admire artists like Amy, but also to seek authenticity in his own life. That night taught him that to create something meaningful, you have to give yourself body and soul, without worrying about external expectations. Amy's gesture was not only a gift to him on that stage, but a valuable lesson about the true nature of art and human connection. Over the years, this fan would become one of many people who would tell his story as an example of how music can change lives. But for him, the most important thing wasn't being recognized for having performed on stage with Amy Winehouse, but for having experienced a moment of pure personal transformation. He knew that the true magic of music lay in the exchange it provided, in its ability to unite people in a way that transcends time and words. As the fan descended from the stage, still immersed in his personal reflections, the audience was completely shaken. What had just happened was no mere spectacle. It wasn't just another Amy Winehouse performance. Her gesture, inviting a fan to share the stage with her, touched something deep in the hearts and minds of everyone present. For many, that moment was confirmation that art doesn't need barriers, elitism, or distance between those who create and those who receive it. The immediate reaction was an almost reverent silence. People were absorbing the magnitude of what had just happened. In a world where artists are often placed on a pedestal distant from the audience, Amy had broken that convention in a brutally simple yet impactful way. She wasn't just a diva on stage, she was a person, someone willing to connect genuinely and unfiltered with her fans. The audience witnessed a shift, something that transcended the limits of entertainment and approached the true essence of art: exchange, sharing, and human connection. The audience, previously just spectators, now saw themselves as active participants in the show. The energy was palpable. They were no longer there just to admire Amy from afar, but to experience the music in a unique, personal way, almost as if they themselves were taking the stage. They had been invited indirectly to live that experience. And even though it wasn't as literal as in the case of the chosen fan, everyone there felt that, in that moment, they were part of something bigger. They were part of the music, part of the emotion, part of the raw, real experience Amy had shared with them. This impact wasn't limited to the show. After that night, the talk on the streets, in cafes and on social media was about Amy's gesture. Those present began to reflect on how artists distance themselves from their audience, creating an invisible barrier that prevents true connection. Amy had shown that it wasn't about status or VIP fans, but about experiencing art in its purest form, where everyone is equal. That night became a reference point for those who believed that music, and art in general, should be shared experiences without divisions. And what seemed like a spontaneous gesture from Amy, something many would probably dismiss as a display of humility or generosity, actually became a deeper reflection on the artist's role in society. It wasn't just about giving fans what they wanted to hear, but about providing an experience that ultimately would change the way everyone viewed the relationship between stage and audience. For those who witnessed that moment, art ceased to be something distant and began to be understood as something alive, something that can transform not only those who create it, but also those who receive it. In the following weeks, many people began to question other shows, other artists, and the idea that the stage should be a place separate from the audience. That night was a call for everyone to think more deeply about the power of connection through music and how the distance between artists and fans needs to be reconsidered. Amy Winehouse, with her simple gesture, had shown the world that music is not just to be heard, but to be lived, shared, and felt by everyone. She had created an experience that transcended any traditional concept of a concert or performance. Amy Winehouse's spontaneous gesture of calling a fan onto the stage wasn't just an iconic moment at a concert. Over time, it became seen as one of the most significant milestones of her career, not for its grandeur or fame, but for the raw and genuine way Winehouse approached art and its relationship with others. What she did, unafraid to break the conventions of the concert, was create a space where music ceased to be a product consumed remotely and became a shared experience. Amy Winehouse was always an artist who, despite her immense talent, never fit into typical mainstream expectations. She was a unique blend of vulnerability and strength, and this dichotomy shone through in her music and stage presence. However, what made her even more fascinating was her ability to genuinely connect with her audience. She wasn't there to put on a show for others. She was there to experience the music with her fans, as if everyone were participating in something much bigger than a simple performance. Amy's legacy was largely marked by her ability to embrace vulnerability and use it as a tool to create authentic connections. Her music, often marked by themes of love, pain, and resilience, was not only a form of artistic expression, but also a way to connect with those who listened to her. Inviting fans onto the stage was an extension of this philosophy. She didn't want her music to be just something others listened to from afar. She wanted her fans to feel part of the experience, as if, in that moment, they too were the protagonists of her story. This gesture of calling a fan to the stage, though seemingly simple, resonated with a powerful message. Art should be shared. It's not a one-sided exchange where the artist simply stands above the audience, transmitting their art from a position of authority. Rather, Amy wanted everyone to feel like they were participating in this collective experience. Instead of distancing herself from the audience, she brought them into her world, and this, for many, was a fundamental lesson about the nature of art and spectacle. In a world where the barriers between artists and fans are often rigid and impersonal, Amy Winehouse offered a vision of a new kind of connection, one where everyone, artists and admirers alike, can share and express themselves together. This idea of breaking down barriers between the stage and the audience became even more relevant after Amy's death. She was one of the last great stars to live her art intensely without following the established rules of show business. Many artists after her have tried to replicate this closeness with the audience, but few have managed to capture the essence of her gesture. What Amy did was not just a symbolic act, it was a paradigm shift. She taught the world that true art is not about showmanship or the superficial shine of the lights, but about authenticity, the courage to be vulnerable and allow others to share that experience with you. Amy's legacy, then, is multifaceted. She is remembered as one of the greatest voices of her generation, but also as an artist who, rather than keeping her audience at a distance, invited them to participate in her own creative process. She taught us that art is a bridge that unites people, a form of expression that shouldn't be confined to a stage, but should be experienced and shared. The gesture of inviting a fan onto the stage, though fleeting, has become a symbol of what it means to truly connect with your audience. What Amy Winehouse did that night wasn't just an act of generosity or the quirk of an eccentric artist. It was something that resonated deeply within everyone who witnessed it, and in some ways, even for those who heard the story later. Amy didn't just break down the physical barriers between herself and the audience by inviting a fan onto the stage. She broke down the invisible barriers that exist between artist and admirer, between icon and human being. The stage ceased to be an isolated, reserved place and became a space for genuine connection. That night, the biggest change wasn't a fan coming on stage to sing with Amy. The true transformation occurred in the perceptions of those present. What seemed like a spontaneous gesture became a powerful lesson about what it means to be part of something bigger, about how art should be experienced and shared, and about how often it's the simplest moments that have the greatest power to transform the way we see the world. She showed, with her uncomplicated and direct attitude, that we don't need walls of distance to create profound moments of human connection. And what she did in such a simple act of inviting someone to the stage changed everything, because by inviting this fan, she invited everyone else. She reminded us that in art, exchange is what gives meaning, and that no stage is big enough to hide the truth of a genuine connection. Music was never just about listening, it was about feeling, about losing and finding yourself in the notes, the words, the rhythm. In doing so, she transformed what could have been just another performance into a transformative experience, an opportunity for each person there to feel part of the story being told. This unique and unforgettable moment demonstrated Amy Winehouse not only as a great singer, but as a visionary. She knew that true art shouldn't be an elitist, isolated, distant experience. True art is that which permeates, that spreads, that touches each of us personally. She gave everyone present, whether the fan on stage or the thousands of voices surrounding her, the chance to see what is truly possible when art becomes a shared experience. Amy's impact lies not in her albums or her lyrics, but in the way she gave herself to her audience with absolute sincerity and no filter. She didn't need an elaborate set to impress. She impressed through her authenticity, through the simple act of inviting someone to share the stage with her. And in the end, what Amy Winehouse taught us was that the true beauty of music lies in its ability to connect with others, without reservation, without fear of showing who we are, without the need for a separation between artist and fan. This moment, simple in its execution but profound in its meaning, has been immortalized as a symbol of what truly matters. Amy Winehouse didn't just change her fans' perception of her as an artist. She changed the way we think about the role of music, entertainment, and art in our lives. She reminded us, when listening to her music or telling the story of her performance, that we are all, in some way, participants in art, artists and fans together, creating something greater than ourselves. Although Amy Winehouse's gesture that night was only a moment, its impact remains vivid to this day. For many, the simple act of inviting a fan on stage, interacting with them so spontaneously and genuinely, became a symbol of an artist completely at ease with her vulnerability. Music for Amy was always more than a profession or a product. For her, music was a universal language, a way to express herself without filters, without distances, and without barriers. And this moment, more than any other, was a testament to that. Amy Winehouse wasn't just a talented singer, she was a woman who lived her truth in every note she sang. Even with all the personal challenges and complexities that marked her life, she never stopped being authentic in her art. That night, by inviting a fan onto the stage, she wasn't just defying the distance between the stage and the audience, she was also embracing her own humanity. She was saying very clearly that music isn't about being perfect or untouchable. It's about being real, about living in the moment, and about sharing a unique experience with everyone around you. What Amy did that night became a representation of her career as a whole, without masks, without disguises, without pretensions. She wasn't afraid to show her weaknesses. On the contrary, she used those weaknesses to create a deeper connection with her audience. Vulnerability turned into strength, and pain became music. The ability to give oneself completely to what one does, without reservations, was something she carried through to her very last gesture. And this gesture of calling a fan onto the stage was undoubtedly one of the most symbolic. Amy Winehouse's untimely death in 2011, while tragically cutting short her career, didn't erase the mark she left on music and culture. She was part of a movement where artists didn't need to hide behind an idealized image, but rather allowed themselves to be authentic, human, and often imperfect. And even though her life was marked by ups and downs, her legacy lives on in the way she challenged music industry norms and, in doing so, changed the way we relate to art. Today, when we remember that unique moment on stage, it's not just about a fan being invited to sing with a global star. It's a reminder that true art isn't about isolating yourself on a pedestal, but about giving yourself to the audience genuinely, without masks. Amy taught us that art is about sharing, connecting, being vulnerable, and above all, being real. And no matter how many times the stage lights dim, the music she created and the way she lived it continue to resonate, bringing comfort and inspiration to those who follow her. Amy Winehouse's legacy goes beyond her songs, beyond her unique voice. The impact she had on how we view music and the role of artists is undeniable. She showed the world that being authentic doesn't just mean being true to yourself, but also to others. Her gesture of inviting a fan to the stage was a reflection of what she represented, breaking down barriers between the star and her audience, transforming the show into a space for true and constant exchange. Furthermore, her personal story, marked by struggles and overcoming, also contributes to the power of her legacy. Amy wasn't just a singer who dominated the stage. She was a woman who poured her heart and soul into every lyric, every melody, every note. And that's what made her unique. Her art wasn't about perfection. It was about the beauty of vulnerability, the courage to be imperfect, and the strength to express emotions deeper than any stage could contain. As the world continued to move on after her death, the memory of Amy Winehouse and what she represented as an artist only grew stronger. She became an icon who transcended the boundaries of music, a symbol of authenticity in a world that often demands masks and flawless performances. She was never afraid to show herself as she truly was. And this made her timeless, not only in her music, but also in the impact she had on how we view art and culture. The moment Amy called a fan onto the stage was not just a spontaneous action, but a reflection of what she believed to be the true essence of music and art, a shared experience where audience and artist become one. It was the culmination of her vision for what art could be, and from that moment on, the dynamic between artists and fans would never be the same again. Amy Winehouse left us with a powerful and clear lesson. Art is not to be passively consumed, but to be lived, shared, and above all, felt. She taught us that, in its purest form, music is about connecting people, the truest expression of our emotions and stories. And somehow, her gesture that night will always remind us of this, of the importance of being real, of breaking down barriers, and above all, of sharing the experience of art with others.